The first time in American history that a former president has been convicted on criminal charges, Pat. How historic is this?
Well, it's absolutely unprecedented and tragic in its own way, really, that we would reach this point of a major political figure being in this position. And again, this isn't the only legal trouble that Donald Trump has faced. He has other indictments yet to come. He's already been found liable in a financial fraud case in New York State. There was the case of whether he sexually abused someone and defamed them. So all of these things put together have to raise the question is, how is that going to affect voters here in Maine and elsewhere? Now, those who are already committed to supporting Donald Trump may just retreat farther into their corner and not be moved. Perhaps they won't. That's something we won't really know for a long time.
We took this question to our experts as well, Phil and Ethan both weighing in tonight. Let's listen into what they had to say about this. Thank you so much to the two of you for joining us here on this Sunday. We're now 3 days removed from this historic verdict. Let's pick things up on Friday. President Trump going after the judge in this case, calling him a tyrant, and then Biden a couple hours after that referring to those comments as being reckless and dangerous. What are your impressions now that the follow just continues after this verdict?
Yeah, well, that is totally in character for Donald Trump. No one should be surprised at his rhetoric, which is part of the reason he frustrates people and energizes others. He's still under a gag order, so I'm sure there's more that he wants to say and prove that he hasn't been able to do so yet.
Yeah, we all wish that gag order went a little bit further than what it's currently going. You know, this is just standard operating procedure for Trump, and unfortunately, a lot of the acolytes who are around him, when they don't like the outcome of something, they just attack the process instead of arguing, the actual facts or, what he really should do, which is accept some responsibility, be humble, recognize that a jury of your peers has convicted you and you are now a felon, and your best path forward is to ask for forgiveness instead of trying to just attack everyone as being wrong.
Is the jury's decision here going to change anyone's minds?
I think it might on the fringe. I think you're going to see people who feel like this has been, orchestrated judicial process are going to say, I may not like the guy, but now I'm more convinced than ever that I have to vote for him. And then there'll be others that are gleeful and feel like he got what he deserved and throw him in jail.
Ethan, there was a survey that came out from ABC News and Ipsos, which found that 16% of likely Trump voters said that they could be influenced to potentially not vote for the former president if he's convicted of a felony. Do you buy that? Do you think the percentage is more or less?
I don't buy that. That seems way too high, 16% of likely Trump voters. I think there are folks in the middle who are not paying attention to politics anywhere near as much of folks like we are. And I think they're going to see that this guy is a convicted felon, and that, just adds to the turmoil of what kind of presidency he would recreate.
I think there's some underlying challenges here. First of all, the judicial system is built for the opportunity for people convicted to have a review, a second look, an appeal. And President Trump, I think, rightly says, we wanted to change the venue. 86% of voters in this district voted for Joe Biden. They wanted to move it over to Staten Island, where the mix was a little better. The Republican and Democrat, the judge said no. Trump wanted to bring in the federal election official to testify that there was no laws broken at the federal level, and the judge said no. They wanted the judge to recuse himself because of the appearance of conflicts. The judge said no. The instructions to the jury was something like 52 pages long. And so all of these things, whether you like Trump or not, are worthy of having a fresh look in a different venue to make sure that justice is served.
Ethan, I'm going to pose this next question to you. How do you think, it's a long time between now and November, that this jury decision is going to influence not just this race, but really all races that are going to be on the ballot this fall? For example, we saw the two candidates in the Republican primary for Maine's 2nd Congressional District both come out and hammer this verdict, and also using it as an opportunity to go after the Secretary of State, Shanna Bellows, who at one time had moved to remove Donald Trump from the ballot.
This is the sad state of the GOP right now, that a convicted felon, that everybody's falling all over themselves to try to protect him and to try to fight for him. And remember, not just a convicted felon, but a guy who's been held civilly liable for sexually attacking a woman, for a guy who's been held liable on his business practices and being fined up to $500 million. I mean, this is somebody who just has a trail of criminal and unethical behavior behind him. And the GOP, a party that 20 years ago just never would have accepted this, all of a sudden is falling all over themselves to try to protect him. It's a very sad state. You know, at some point it will be over, either when he loses or, you know, sometime before then. This will all be done. And I think a lot of the Republicans who are now trying to defend him or try to claim the process was fraudulent, they're gonna start to realize that that was not the right path.
Maine Senator Susan Collins, the only member of Maine's congressional delegation who's come out to defend the former president. They have not always seen eye to eye. I think that's a bit of an understatement. Phil, but is there any concern in your mind that this sets a dangerous precedent, I suppose? I mean, this particular case, falsifying business records, this isn't election interference, for example, that some people may perceive as being a larger criminal case with greater implications for the entire country. That this case in particular, and that the DA chose to pursue it, is that concerning?
Well, it is, and I think Senator Collins is correct in saying that this appears, and that's why we need to have an appeal process, that this was politically motivated. And I think, to Ethan's point, if the voters who are leaning towards Trump saw it his way, you wouldn't have seen President Trump raise over $34 million after the verdict. You wouldn't see 25,000 people show up in the Bronx, almost 80,000 in New Jersey. These tend to be deep blue areas where people are responding, saying, I may not understand the details, but it sure appears that they are out to get this guy, and that's not how our justice is supposed to be.
Ethan, there's certainly a lot of reinvigorated enthusiasm for supporters of the president. Does that concern you as somebody that's fully behind Joe Biden in November?
No, it's not. I mean, did they find the 25,000 people in a 15 million pool of people that would support Donald Trump for a rally in the Bronx? Sure, but it's easy to get a big crowd at a rally. You need to look at what the numbers are. His favorable numbers are very low. They're probably going to drop further.
In the eyes of the law, he is a first-time offender, Class E, the lowest level felony. July 11th, the sentencing date, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Phil, does he serve any time behind bars?
Well, I think if you look at the track record of Alvin Bragg with other felonies that are released on their own recognizance, I can't believe that he's going to recommend jail time, but we'll see. He could recommend anything from house arrest to probation to jail.
Ethan, what do you think?
Unfortunately, we don't. The penalties we have on white-collar crimes are very soft in this country. But even in this case, he's a first-time convicted felon. It's an it's an E felony. I think probation is probably what he's going to recommend in some capacity over the next couple of years or something. So I don't expect there to be jail time, and nor would I really advocate for there to be jail time in this case.
The sentencing date for the former president is now July 11th. It's a long time between now and November 2, Pat. So what happens next in this process?
It's also 4 days before the start of the Republican National Convention, in which Donald Trump is most likely going to be nominated for president once again. I think what's going to unfold over time as people absorb this, there will be an appeals process that plays out. But the fact is, this conviction happened. A jury that was approved by both the prosecution and the defense said, no, he's guilty of these crimes. You can argue, others will, and they'll continue to stick to their talking point, this is political persecution. But the fact is, you had a jury of Donald Trump's peers in New York City say he's guilty of these. The question is going to be, are Republicans willing to own this? Is there no backing off at all? And how hard are Democrats going to ride this? Or are they going to still try to make a case on issues that people actually care about? This, of course, is of massive interest, but it doesn't change our lives the way a lot of the other issues do. Can they find a way to rise above this and make their case on its merits?
All right, Pat, we appreciate the analysis so much.